Hello, Maverick traders. Welcome out to your currency recap, December 11th. Corey here with you. Nice to see all of you. Let's jump right in. We're going to take a look at what's meaningful and what's moving in the markets. We're going to talk about different areas of interest, certainly some changes taking place. We've talked about the big downturn in oil that's been carrying the CAD to new lows as a currency play. I think that's reversing here in the very short term, which is an interesting dynamic. And then as always, we're going to try to highlight our very best ideas. All right, so on our new ideas list here, a little bit of a change. You can see just in velocity. Now, this is just short-term momentum. This is not necessarily my viewpoint of where the best ideas are, but sometimes it matches up. Right now, we have a little bit of a change in velocity where the Canadian dollar has turned up. It's still long-term been in this downward phase, but I think this is a little bit of an area where oil seems to be catching a little bit of a bottom, and I'd call it a reversal of fortunes a little bit. So we've talked about how oil moving lower and oil prices moving lower is very good for the consumer, very good for stocks in general. So the risk taking, I mean, this is a good thing. SPX, the S&P 500, generalized risk, things like Aussie and Kiwi outperforming. That's been the case. That's what has already transpired, and we've talked about that for a few months. So now the question is, well, does oil get a little bit of a mean reversion trade? Not necessarily a major bottom, but just a mean reversion, some sort of corrective phase up here. If you follow Elliott Wave, maybe an ABC style correction, a good-sized rally, which again is not a major problem for the consumer. It's just a bit of a bounce back, but the S&P could take a little bit of a pause or even continue higher in that mode. But more on the currency side, I think you could see a little bit of a rotation. I think it's oil up in the short term. I think things like crypto have seen their high, have exhausted tops, and the CAD, which is more correlated to oil than anything, I like it in the next little while. Again, short term, next few days, next couple of weeks, for a bounce back similarly. So CAD is my new favorite idea on the long side, and that's quite a change because I have been on record for the past few weeks hating the CAD, talking about how you want to stay long Aussie and Kiwi and forget about the CAD. I think this is an area where we can change that viewpoint. So as we look at things that are moving, I mean, Japanese yen down big today, and we'll touch on that a little bit more as well. News today, the S&P 500 makes a new 52-week high. So we're reaching new highs. We're hitting the new high list in equities overall. This is something that when people say, well, you're hitting a new high, is that a good time to buy? Yeah, typically it is from a momentum standpoint. Regulators named Wells Fargo and other banks in mortgage pricing discrimination. Big money center banks continue to have regulatory issues, and it just is an ongoing issue. Now, I don't think this is any major news event that derails the markets or anything like that, but certainly within the banking sector, this is a problem that they continue to run into issues. So Japanese yen, the big mover today, down almost 1%. Everything else pretty flat. CAD in there pretty flat like everything else by comparison. Crypto, the big outlier on the downside, down 7%. Everything got hammered. It's been a good run. It's been a nice rally in crypto generally. But I think, again, this is a period where it's probably going to go through some sort of consolidative, corrective phase, and that's okay. That doesn't derail a long-term uptrend or anything like that necessarily, but in the short term certainly has been exhausted to the upside. And notice, like we've talked about, everything outperforms Bitcoin Cash. So Bitcoin Cash is by far and away the worst. When these cryptocurrencies go up, it goes up less than everything else. When they go down, it goes down more than everything else. That's exactly what you want in your bearish area. So Bitcoin Cash is the gift that keeps on giving on the short side, and then on the long side, just Bitcoin itself vastly outperforming. Now, as we look at equities, again, new 52-week highs, new breakout above prior highs. You can't see them. This chart doesn't go back quite enough, but we just pierced those prior highs from earlier this year. When you hit new 52-week highs, most people get nervous and think, well, I can't buy at a new high. It's already run its course. Actually, that's where you typically, the floodgates kind of open up. So the S&P could still continue to rally. I want you to keep that in mind, that just because something has gone up does not mean it has to stop. So as we look at this S&P chart, we've actually gone through a couple of weeks of consolidation, high basing, and now we're starting to break out again. Technically speaking, this is very healthy. 20 above the 50, upward sloping moving averages. What's not to like? As we look at what's on tap this week, certainly all eyes focused on a couple of things. We get a CPI report in the US tomorrow morning. We get the FOMC meeting on Wednesday afternoon. Chuck full. We have so many things moving and shaking. We've got Swiss National Bank meeting, their interest rate decision. We've got the Bank of England. We've got the ECB. We've got retail sales in the U.S. We've got everything. Everything imaginable. And why is that? When you have a major holiday like December 25th coming up and Christmas, everything gets front loaded and pushed towards just before that. And you don't want to have major meetings on the 22nd, the 23rd. So this is the week. Everything in getting in ahead of Christmas, and they say, let's pack it all in. This isn't necessarily intentional to have everything line up on the same week, but it's pretty typical of that December month. So this is our busy week, and then it quiets down considerably for the rest of this year. Everything is kind of front loaded into early, and right here in mid-December, this is the week for economic news and circumstances that can change currencies, movements and trends and all those sorts of things. So certainly be aware there should be quite a bit of volatility this week. So let's get to some ideas. One of the areas of interest has been this idea that Bitcoin Cash continues to underperform. So if you are inclined to play crypto to the downside, you really have to look at this range that Bitcoin Cash has been in and probably get a breaking out of this range to the downside. So if you're bearish, I think Bitcoin Cash is fine. If you're bearish, you've got to look at that as probably the next shoe to drop in the crypto markets, maybe even a pairs trade where you're shorting that against other things. That's what we've been talking about the past few weeks, and it's been working like a charm. If you look at other currencies, notice this 20-period moving average and how, really since back here in late September when we broke below the 20, we've essentially gone up to it and failed, gone up to it and failed, gone up to it and failed, and now we're just piercing above that for the first time in months. This is the Canadian dollar against all others stacked up, and it's not like it had some big robust rally, but it looks like we can trade higher for the foreseeable future. Again, just very short term. Also, I would point out, look at this little failed move. See how you wicked, you kind of shadowed below support, looked like the CAD could break down, and this is what we call a fake breakdown. There will be false breakouts to the upside. This is a false breakdown to the downside, and from false moves come fast moves. So we're a little bit late in that you could already be long CAD as you saw this big reversal here. You could have entered here and already be up, but that's fine. I don't think it's too late necessarily for the trade. There should be, again, a little bit more to go here for a couple of weeks would be my viewpoint. So CAD, we had that false move. Look at your CAD long ideas as maybe an area of interest. Now we'll see if it can gather any momentum. If it just falls back sharply within the next day or two and just can't hold these levels, well, then all bets are off. But I suspect we're going to have a little bit of a reprieve here on those CAD shorts, and the CAD shorts will probably carry this to the upside as they buy and new longs come in to buy and so forth. So we're doing the currency recap here. We'll have classes all throughout the week. We're going to do a live FOMC meeting here on Wednesday. Plenty to keep us busy in currency land. Hope you've enjoyed this currency recap. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.